Hi, boys and girls. It's good to see you again. The last time we were together, we were talking about parables. Parables were the stories that Jesus used to teach people lessons about God and God's kingdom. So, do you remember the parable of the lost sheep? And it taught us that when we sin, when we do things that hurt God or hurt other people, we're like a lost sheep. And the shepherd will leave his 99 other sheep behind to go out and search for and find the one lost sheep and bring him home. So in our story today, we're going to hear about a man named Zacchaeus who was like a lost sheep because of the way he lived. The way he lived hurt other people. And then we're going to hear how Jesus, who we also call the Good Shepherd, finds him. So Zacchaeus was a tax collector. What do you think a tax collector does? He collects taxes, right? He collects money. Zacchaeus' job was to collect money for the Roman government. So tax collectors could collect as much money as they wanted from people, but they would only give to the government what was due, and then they'd keep the rest for themselves. So if they took a little extra, well, that was how they made money. That was how they got paid. But oftentimes tax collectors were greedy, and instead of just taking a little extra, they took a whole lot extra. So that wasn't a good thing. How do you think that made people feel? Well, they could have been sad, they could have been hurt, but they probably were angry, right? Do you think they liked Zacchaeus? No, probably not. People in Jesus' time usually didn't like the tax collectors, so the tax collectors were not really accepted into the community. They had a lot of money, but they didn't have any friends. In our story today, Jesus finds Zacchaeus in a strange place. Where do you think Jesus might find Zacchaeus? I don't know. Let's read our story and find out. I'm going to read our story today from the Bible. It's found in the Gospel Luke. Now remember that the first 4 books of the New Testament are also called Gospels, and they contain the stories about Jesus' life and his ministry. So our story today is found in Luke chapter 18, verse 31 through chapter 19, verse 10. And it's actually 3 stories ending with the story of Zacchaeus. So the first part is Jesus again tells about his coming death. Jesus took the 12 to one side. He told them, "We are going up to Jerusalem. Everything that the prophets wrote about the Son of Man will come true. He will be handed over to people who are not Jews. They will make fun of him. They will laugh at him and spit on him. They will whip him and kill him. On the 3rd day he will rise from the dead." The disciples did not understand any of this. Its meaning was hidden from them, so they didn't know what Jesus was talking about. Now the second part of our story is called "A Blind Beggar Receives His Sight." Jesus was approaching Jericho. A blind man was sitting by the side of the road begging. The blind man heard the crowd going by. He asked what was happening. They told him, "Jesus of Nazareth is passing by." So the blind man called out, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Those who led the way commanded him to stop. They told him to be quiet, but he shouted even louder, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stopped and ordered the man to be brought to him. When the man came near, Jesus spoke to him. "What did you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked. "Lord, I want to be able to see," the blind man replied. Jesus said to him, "Receive your sight. Your faith has healed you." Right away he could see. He followed Jesus, praising God. When all the people saw it, they also praised God. And now the story of Zacchaeus, the tax collector. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man named Zacchaeus lived there. He was a chief tax collector and was very rich. Zacchaeus wanted to see who Jesus was, but he was a short man. He could not see Jesus because of the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree. He wanted to see Jesus, who was coming that way. Jesus reached the spot where Zacchaeus was. He looked up and said, "Zacchaeus, come down at once. I must stay at your house today." Zacchaeus came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this. They began to whisper amongst themselves. They said, "Jesus has gone to be the guest of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood up. He said, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of what I own to those who are poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay it back. I will pay back 4 times the amount I took." Jesus said to Zacchaeus, "Today salvation has come to your house. You are a member of Abraham's family line. The Son of Man came to look for the lost and save them." So let's review that. Jesus is traveling towards Jerusalem, and on the way he passes through the city of Jericho. Now, do you remember from the second part of the story that I read what Jesus does before he arrives in Jericho? What did he do before he got to Jericho? There was a man sitting on the side of the road. Right. There was a blind man sitting on the side of the road, and Jesus heals him. So he restores his sight. Then Jesus gets to Jericho, and there's a big crowd, right? Why can't Zacchaeus see Jesus? Do you remember? Well, Zacchaeus was a short man, and the crowd was blocking his view. They probably didn't like Zacchaeus very much, so they weren't going to let him through to the front where he could see. So Zacchaeus has an idea. What does Zacchaeus do? Do you remember? He climbs up a tree, right? It said it was a sycamore fig tree, and that's where Jesus finds him. Jesus looks up and he sees Zacchaeus. And do you remember what Jesus said to Zacchaeus? He said, "Come down. I will be a guest at your house today." So Jesus went to have dinner with Zacchaeus. And how do you think the people felt about that, the crowd? They weren't very happy. Why would Jesus go with this man who was a sinner, who did things that weren't right? He took their money. So how do you think it made Zacchaeus feel? He was probably happy, right? And Zacchaeus actually, what did he do? He actually repented, right? He was sorry for what he did, and he said he would give half of everything he owned to the poor, and he would pay everybody back 4 times. So Jesus decided to visit Zacchaeus' home, even though Zacchaeus was not always nice to people, and people didn't like Zacchaeus. And that upset people. But Jesus' visit changed Zacchaeus. It changed his heart, right? It made Zacchaeus realize that what he had done was wrong. And Zacchaeus admits what he did, and he tries to make things better. So how do you think the people felt about that? I bet they were happy. Do you think they liked Zacchaeus better? I think so. Today we're going to make a tree craft to help us remember an important place in the story, because that's where Jesus found Zacchaeus, right? So to make this craft, you're going to need some Elmer's type glue, something to color with, a sheet of paper plus a smaller piece, a scissors, and some green tissue paper. And I've cut some of mine up into squares. So I'm going to go through the steps to make this craft, and then you can pause the video and take extra time to finish your tree craft, or you can finish it later if you'd like. So to get started, what you want to do is you want to trace your hand and a portion of your arm on the large sheet of paper. So if this is too hard to do on your own, you can have a parent or a family member help you with this. So I'm just tracing around my hand with a brown crayon. This could be something you could help each other with, right? Zacchaeus climbed up, it said, a sycamore fig tree in our story. Okay. So can you see that? So your hand, your arm became the trunk, and your fingers are the branches. And then you can just color that in brown. And I'm coloring this on my dining room table, and it's got a wood grain behind it. So it's kind of like those coin etches we made a couple weeks ago. I'm just going to color a portion of this. You can actually see the wood grain from the table coming out in my coloring. So that makes it look even more like tree bark. Okay, so I'm not going to finish that whole thing right now, but you'd color that in brown. Then your next step would be to add glue where you want the leaves. So you can do it in portions, or you can do it all at once. So you just put some glue on there, and then you take your green squares of tissue paper, just crunch them up, and you press them down into the glue. That becomes your leaves. It's kind of fun. Oops, I got two sheets here. You can swirl them around a little bit, make sure they're sticking. Now, if you didn't have tissue paper, maybe you just have construction paper at your house, you could cut leaves out of construction paper and you could glue those onto your tree. And if you don't have any green paper at your house right now and you don't want to go out and get some of that, you could color your leaves on, right? So you would just keep doing that until you have leaves all across your tree. I'm just going to cover up the glue that I have down right now. And you can make as many leaves as you want on there. Okay, so you would keep going and you'd make all your leaves. Then your next step would be to take your small piece of tissue paper and draw a picture of Zacchaeus on it. So I have a small piece of paper here where I've drawn Zacchaeus on, and you just cut him out. So I'm not going to cut exactly on the lines. I'm just going to kind of cut around just the general shape. And there we have Zacchaeus. Now once you get all your leaves all around the tree, you would just tape or glue Zacchaeus up in the tree, because that's where Jesus found him, right? So I have a picture here that I finished, just to give you an idea of how it'll look when it's done. So there's the tree. I'll put my Zacchaeus on here. I would glue my Zacchaeus right here. Put some glue down. Press Zacchaeus up there. Let's see. Okay. And then what I did was I added some words from our story. So I wrote Zacchaeus' name, Zaccheaus, Zacchaeus. That way that helps me remember who this is up in the tree. And then I looked in the Bible story and I took the last verse. So it says, the Son of Man came to look for the lost and save them. And that comes from Luke chapter 19, verse 10. So if you'd like, you can pause the video now and finish your tree, or you can work on that later. And when you come back, we'll talk about our highs and our lows. And just one quick reminder before you leave, if you made the envelope banks with me a couple weeks ago to save coins, I have some coins in here. We're saving lost coins for 1 great hour of sharing. Remember to turn those in by the end of March. You can bring those to the church office and then they'll donate that money to 1 great hour of sharing. Okay, go ahead and pause the video if you'd like to work on your tree. Otherwise, we'll talk about our highs and our lows. It's time to talk about our highs, our lows, and our God sightings. What made you happy? What made you sad? And where did you see God this week? So for my high, I think I shared with you last September that my husband was building a screen porch with the help of family and friends. And the last step was to install windows. Well, we ordered the windows and they said that's going to take 3 months. So it's like, okay. And then it actually ended up taking 2 more months than they thought. So it took 5 months. And then when the windows came in, we had lots and lots of snow. Remember all the big piles of snow? So now that we've had a few nice days, the windows are starting to go in and I can see my backyard and the sunshine and my bird feeder again. And that makes me happy. So for lows, I had a pretty good week. So it was hard for me to think of a low, but I guess one thing is that my husband's woodworking machine that he uses for cutting signs, it broke. So he was kind of sad. He has to get that fixed now, and it broke right in the middle of his project. So for a God sighting, I was looking at nature and thinking about nature, and we were out for a ride, and we saw that someone had tapped their maple trees. So my God sighting is maple syrup. On a warm spring day after a cold night, the sap in a tree moves down from the branches, down through the trunk, and people can drill a hole into the tree, and they can catch the sap, and they can make maple syrup with it. So maple syrup is my God sighting. What kind of things can you think about? What made you happy this week? What made you sad, and where did you see God? Did you think of something? You can share those with your parent or another family member, and if you'd like, you can share them with us at church too. We'd love to hear from you. Let's finish our time together with a prayer. So we've talked in the past about different ways we can pray. We can pray with our hands folded or with our hands up in the air. We can pray silently in our thoughts, or we can pray out loud. We can say a prayer or we can sing a prayer. Do you remember when we wrote a prayer on a paper airplane and flew it to God? Well, today I'm going to show you how to say a bubble prayer. So in a bubble prayer, you can say please, thank you, or I'm sorry. You can ask God to please help you or someone with a problem. You can think about something you're thankful for, Or you can think about something you're sorry for. And then after you think about it, you blow bubbles. So I'll say a part of the prayer and then I'll blow some bubbles. So I'm in my backyard here, and it's probably not a good idea to blow bubbles in your house unless you're in the bathtub. So I'll blow the bubbles for now. You can pretend you have a big handful of bubbles, and when I blow my bubbles, you can blow your pretend bubbles. We'll see how this works. Are you ready? Have your handful of bubbles ready? All right. God, you are awesome, and we love you so much. But sometimes we do wrong, and we hurt you or other people. Today we think about some of these things we have on our hearts. So let's just take a moment to think about a time when maybe we've done something wrong. Okay, and let's think about that and lift that up to God. Okay, let's blow some bubbles. Right. But God, we are sorry for these things. We know that sometimes we do wrong. We also know that we can share these things with you. We share these things, God, because we know that you always listen to us. So let's blow some bubbles. We ask your forgiveness, God. Help us love you and love other people more. Thank you for loving us. Let's blow some bubbles. Oh, dear God, thank you for loving us even when we're not perfect. Thank you for loving us and finding us. Amen. One more time. Let's try to blow some bubbles. So I made my bubble solution. I used 4 tablespoons water, 1 tablespoon dish soap, and 2 tablespoons of sugar. You can try that, or you can go out and buy a bottle of bubble solution. So if it's a nice spring day, make yourself or get yourself some bubble solution. Go outside and say a prayer. Thanks, guys. See you next time.